Yep.
We are now live.
All
Peace,
right.
family. Peace,
Mm-hmm.
everybody. MBK is back in the building. We have something special. We have the Sister Kaba, First Lady of MBK. She's in the building. She's in the
Mm-hmm.
building. She's in the building. She's gonna tell us uh what she's gonna add on about.
Peace, family. Peace and love to the family. Y'all know this is your sister Kaba. Alan got me all up this morning with this here. I've been waiting to do it though because it's important. We always talk about the importance of starting where we stand. So, you know, this is no exception to that. But peace, everybody. I hope everybody is being as safe as they can out here in this society. Peace to the NBK family and everybody. And this is not going to be long. I've already timed myself at 30 minutes. We're going to get through it. 30 minutes. You know, it's not going to be long. So, but we're going to talk about an African American town that just happened to be in the middle of a battlefield. You know, that town was called Fazendeville, right? It's an African American town, one of a black community. You had Creole families there, you know, and there's a significance to that story that we'll cover here. A place that's had been in the middle of a created and started and settled in the middle of where a battlefield had once took place like 100 years prior, and an African American man by the name of John Pierre Fazende, right? He would be biracial. That's what we would call him. He inherited a plot of land, you know, years earlier. And upon his sickness, he in turn passed it down to his son. Now, we know as African American people at that time, there were some of us that were still enslaved early on. And they emancipated slaves were able to purchase properties and things from this man, John Fazende. So because we couldn't get that 40 acres in that mule, we were content with little small parcel areas and pieces of land to build modest homes for ourselves. So Fazendeville was a small but thriving town. It was very self-sufficient. It was very rich in its social and cultural traditions, right? And there was a heavy emphasis on community, which is something we talk about all the time is community. It was referred to as in so many other places, like we find in New York and Alabama, the village. That was the name of it. It was called the village by its residents. Now, this little town, which is really less known to many after the Civil War, was a community, as I stated aforementioned, free and freed people of color. That's the African, the emancipated African, that mixed race African. Remember, we were all in a fight together, right? So a lot of people grew up on this land that this all of this fighting had occurred like 100 or some odd years prior, right? And the land by which these people started in 1867 was with this Battleground Baptist Church that was also established in 1868, right? This place had um, its own general stores. We had a one room schoolhouse. That schoolhouse taught first through eighth grades. There were two benevolent societies there, and as aforementioned, the Battleground Baptist Church, right? And people from New Orleans, they understand just what I'm talking about. Fazendeville Road, which ran from St. Bernard Highway to the River Road, you know, and all of this ran alongside the base of the Mississippi River, right? There were more than 50 families there at this time, but they were all forced to relocate when the National Park Service they obtained this land. So let's keep moving, family. Fazendeville, you know, was a place in what we call um, in New Orleans the Lower Ninth Ward of New Orleans. Even though it's in Arabic, in St. Bernard Parish, we called it the Lower Nine. All right, we called it the Lower Nine. They still call it the Lower Nine today. For nearly a century, as the stream shows here, an African American community existed on the former battleground at Chalmette. These properties were expropriated and bulldozed in the 1960s to expand the national park site, right? And as the village, because of the rich cultural histories that were there of the people, this battleground where these people live, you know, the war was fought there, and we need to understand that that war was fought there based in a lot of things. We know Andrew Jackson. We're going to talk about him a little bit and what he did with the Negro colored troops, right? A lot of times um, when we have established things, just like within New York, Danny and Rabon talks about it all the time. Talk about that um, Seneca Village, you know, that you would never know was a thriving community, just like this one here that we had. That you'll learn where it was, its location, how it thrived for over 100 years, and how it was almost forgotten until someone had to tell the story. You know, what was important to me was the notion that they made the statement that the charge to preserve one history sacrificed that of another, in which it did. Because later generations are just very unaware of all the complex layers that went into this town we know as Fazendeville. And everything that it had, people going to church and the children playing in the park and, the chatter of the neighbors on the porch, the swings, you know, it only lives on in memory at this point, you know, that Battle of New Orleans, which we'll talk about, and how we will don't know where to commemorate our own fallen soldiers based off location. So the War of 1812, we know, was identified as the Second War for Independence, right? You know, called to arms and brought forward a plethora of blacks to fight against the British, as denoted, enslaved blacks. We had a choice, though. They had a choice. Enslaved. They could run away, right? They could seek some freedom amongst the natives of the land, those Indians. We call them Indians, the Native American Indians. You know? We could fight for America or join this British, or join the British, in which Dammy and Rabon always talk to, and Sanab, they always talk about how we, you know, fought on both sides of this thing. Most African Americans that fought for the country, they tolerated slavery. You know, you see what I'm saying? So, I mean, they really did. So it's a lot to this land. Not just that they wanted to come in and, you know, bulldoze the whole community with everything. It had started its own pharmacies, even, you know, because we know that when our African Americans were fighting, 60% of them, 60% of those soldiers inside that fortification, they were immigrants. And maybe one or two, maybe out of a few, were African American. And then that's noted that flag that fluttered over the fort, right? We know it was stitched together by the hands of blacks as well as some whites. We can't deny it. It is also noted that a runaway 21-year-old slave named William Williams, he served in the 38th Infantry, right? In the regiment. Look what we endured. A British cannonball blew off one of his legs, right? So we went through a lot, and Andrew Jackson, he called to the troops. The enslaved troops fought fiercely. They fought strategically, right? With limited training in their wars, right? and many of them died, like with the case of one soldier called Roberts, who suffered grave injuries. And it is noted that by the end of that war, the enslaved soldiers had aided in the decisive defeat of the British, right, in 1815. Right then and there, they had proven that they were worthy to this quote unquote American Republic, right? But had they secured their freedom? Had they secured their freedom? No, they did not. We know that Jackson not only ordered all the black troops out of New Orleans at the sight of these white residents, they were all fearful of seeing quote unquote blacks and Negroes with arms in arms dwelling throughout the city. Andrew Jackson, he did so much he reneged on his offer to free the enslaved troops. He said he would. Them and those Indians. He said he would, but instead he ordered them to return to their slave owners. And all of this is despite their sacrifices. Right? They remained in bondage. Right? And that one of the soldiers, he made a statement once this was done to him. He felt bad about it. He said, and I quote here, I had just 2 days before cut off the heads of 6 brave Englishmen, and Jackson's life at that moment appeared no more to me than theirs. It was well for him that he took the precaution to have our guns unloaded when in the ammunition house. For see, his guilty conscience smote him and told him he was doing us a great piece of injustice in promising us by the most solemn protestation that we should be free if the victory were gained. I would have shot him dead 1,000 times if that could have been done. Noted by Roberts. And of course, because he made that statement at what they would proclaim as to be an assassination attempt, spectators, all the white spectators, they proposed that he be shot, for such a quote unquote insult. And Jackson recommended several corporal punishments, but he escaped those, Roberts. That's in the person that fought, was lied to and felt bad. He escaped it because he had a sympathetic, quote unquote, sympathetic overseer at the Smith's plantation, right? So Robert, like so many other of these African American soldiers, were all forced to go and return back to the cotton field of their enslaved compatriots. So we know what we did here. We know what that war caused. So much that went on in that war, And then we know that the treaty again then was signed in 1814, right? And because of that, they wanted this level of peace. All conquered territory was to be returned and commissioned. They would be planned to be settled, the boundary of the United States and Canada. This is what all of this was about. It had nothing to do with us. So when we were creating situations for ourselves and starting communities like the one you see here, Fazendeville, the last thing we needed after being there for over 100 years was to have them to come in, because they fought 100 years prior, or 50, 70 years prior, because they fought there, and their bodies are here along this line. We have the unmarked graves of those colored, quote unquote, colored Negroes that fought, as well as the whites, right? Fazendeville was right here, right? And so when they wanted to put, what they did was they put a national monument here in association with where the war had been fought in 1951. The geological survey shows here, the relationship to the Chalmette battleground and the town of Chalmette and Fazendeville, which was located on land that had been a portion of the battlefield in the Battle of New Orleans. I mean, come on, after all, we did lose family there. You see? We did lose them there as well, you know. So, we know it existed for 100 years, thrived. This image here will make you think of the movie, if you ever saw the movie Rosewood, gives you that imagery of that town, that once thriving town. They had a piano, and others who were oppressing them then probably had a chicken. I mean, we did real well, which is why I understand so much now as to why my grandparents never trusted banks, and because they were about community then, and we should be about community now. But we understand where we are. So this new battleground, fam. All right, just before I get there, I want to show you in regard to Fazendeville and where its geographic relationship to where we are. We on the southeast here, Louisiana. You see, and you could pretty much call Fazendeville New Orleans because that's where they are. If you have a little line that divides one little town being called, okay, I mess with my brothers in New York. One little town, one place being called Harlem, and one being called Brooklyn, right? It's the same thing. So you know that we're there the entire time. I have an aunt that lives in St. Bernard Parish right now. So we were there. This is just to show, on the map where we were, where all of this took place, right? And this is a photograph here showing Fazendeville with the Shawn Monument and the National Cemetery. This is when they were getting ready to, you know, remove these people who had established so much on their own. It was their homes. After all, they were forced to go places with nothing. Their homes that they purchased were taken from them. Just straight is just gone. Right? This new battlefield at the turn of the century. See, at the turn of the century, Fazendeville had become a stable community. Right? And as I talked about all of the, the schoolhouse and the church and there was a whole lot of, and as the years passed, the community came so close to the sound of different automobiles and things because they were doing all of this development in the area. So it was it had isolated community surroundings because of this open ground belonging to a variety of corporations at the time. They were fighting for the land. So the children there, they would do what many of us did here. They'd catch crawfish and, rice mill channels, the mom, they had pecan trees everywhere. Neighboring pecan groves are all over that area. You see? They picnicked. That's what I said. All over, right? For more than 100 years. They remained undisturbed. They remained tranquil. Families grew food. Families grew education. A lot of them went off to college. They began their professional careers. They called this place home for a long time, and then circumstances beyond any of their controls would alter their lives forever. Residents were trapped between that impact of an expanding Kaiser aluminum plant, right? And this desire to unite this national park and this national cemetery all in one. So you had the sequential committee that was set up by Robert Kennedy in 63. He appointed 6 members. Because and what does that do? That is a commission that's created to pay homage to this significant events that had taken place at 150 years. So yeah, they were coming in for the land, and it would not have mattered who lived there. There was, and I'll read this, and I'll quote here. On February 16, 1962, Senator John Russell B. Long testified before a U.S. Senate committee on a resolution to establish a commission for the purpose of supervising the 150th celebration of the Battle of New Orleans. This would be the beginning of the end, right? The commission was comprised of 23 members appointed by federal and state groups. None of them were members of the Fazendeville community. By telegram, Senator Allen J. Ellender and Representative F. Edward Herbert announced that Congress passed and sent to the president for signing into law and resolution to create the commission. Okay? for the celebration of this Battle of New Orleans and to authorize the purchase of certain land within the Chalmette National Historical Park. And there's an article in the St. Bernard Voice dated September 8, 1962. It continues the purchase of certain land within the Chalmette Park is the property individually owned by Negroes residing on Fazendeville Lane. In 63, the National Park Regional Chiefs of Land, Clifford Harriman and Lau Lynch, superintendent of the Chalmette National Park, retained the services of two Army Corps of Engineer land appraisals, Lord Sieber and Joseph, whatever their names are. Their duty was to establish comparable values on the Fazendeville properties. Right? On October 12, 1963, which was just 41 days before the assassination of President Kennedy, former President Kennedy, he signed into law a bill that expropriated the Fazendeville property owners' land, and no one came to their defense. No one. So the St. Bernard Voice reported at 8 a.m. November 25th, 1964, that the Fazendeville Road running from the Mississippi River to the St. Bernard Highway was closed to public travel by the federal government. Right? And this is because their entire argument was that they had to have a juxtaposition. And the juxtaposition is that the fact of two things being seen or placed close together with contrasting effects. So you had the memorial, and then you had the people dying, the graves right there. So yeah, we're gonna have to get this land. They're gonna have to get out of here. They're gonna have to take their greater battlefield church and everything else. We don't care. Close the road off. And right now, it wasn't long ago, I was talking to Danny and Alan. I did some video footage, and I was over there. And I didn't get a chance to really talk back to them, but they saw what I sent them. The reason for that is because you should know the parameters are cut off. They're cut off. And there are some very old historic homes still there right now. Not the ones that were bulldozed, but those of the where they had the quote unquote Africans living at on during the battlefield time. They didn't get rid of any of that. So just to end that off, I want to say that the police jury had a meeting in regard to what was being done. They were mad. They didn't want this road to be closed. The reason they didn't want the road to be closed is they weren't worried about the displacing of the Fazendeville community. Not these African Americans, not these niggas, right? They were concerned about them not being able to get access to the sewer treatment plant that occupied that parcel of land between the community and the river. So they settled their differences and got it together and came as one and grouped up just like they still do today. So today this national park sign is all that is left of Fazendeville. It is all that is left. I'm sorry, it's just it. That's it, family. This is what we have here, and we have what looks like obliques. Oh, what's the is Jehudi Ma'at out there? What's the Jehudi? Give me the chef name for the obliques.
Nah, he not in there.
He ain't in there, B.
Nah.
All right. Peace to my family and that fam. I hope everybody enjoying the show. Hold on, Alan. Let me grab my phone. 1 second. We gonna keep it moving. We almost done. MBK Crypto, my brother. Much love to you. Always fire. Yeah, I love you, brother. Peace to all the family that's in there today. I see y'all, Robert Randy Santevo. All right. I see the fam. My brother Alan Brown, Gullah Juice. Voice of reason for my people. Peace, fam. Peace, Amber Evans. Let's see, Bantu Mandinka. And we got Coach 1X. A piece of Ron Branch. I love y'all. Afro-Asiatic. Zane Montego. Peace, my family. All right, and peace to everybody else that's watching. We tuned in this morning. Hey, I wanted to ask y'all because Alan, He can't really hear too good. Is the sound all right? Because I've been going, but
You
I hope
good?
the
The
sound all
sound,
right. We
sound is
good on the
good.
sound?
You crystal clear.
Do I need to turn it up a little bit? Can I be heard?
Nope,
Can
nope.
y'all
We
hear
hear
me?
you. We hear you.
All right, let me get out of there. Get back to where we was. All right? That obliques. The Cultural Landscape Foundation at the Chalmette Battlefield. It's 100 feet tall, family. And it was erected on some of what we know, which was Fazendeville. It was erected in the honor of the troops of the Battle of New Orleans. You know, not those quote unquote Negro troops. Not those. Because if they would have cared about that, they'd have left some of their descendants where they were, respected that. And so we had that school in Fazendeville. We talked about that. And this is a map here in the location of New Orleans. There are public schools. In 1877, we know that we had challenges, all right? Challenging narrative. But as you can see here, blue dots represent black schools and red dots represent white schools. Look at the blue dots. This is 1877, family. Look at them. Because we know that there's no way in the world you were going to tell us that we were at the bottom of your barrel. We know that a lot of us fell into, we fell into these situations that weren't any good for us. We knew that we had issues, but we knew that by learning. And how many of these schools do you think had white educators for the black children? None. All right. Maybe some. Maybe a few had the help, because we definitely had, and we can flip that around, the help, because they called us the help, but they were really helping too. Abolitionists, remember? I'm just saying, some were, not all, but some were. Peace, my brother Dammy, true story. Much love, fam. All right. So this is just showing, all of these locations where we had schools in 1877, 73, 77, places like that. Right. And here is that school of Fazendeville. All right. All right. The headline. I'm just going to read this. The headline from a New Orleans Times Picayune stated, community lost its life on Chalmette Battlefield. Former residents remember their homes in Fazendeville, a quiet village that now exists only in their memories. This quotes in the blog post are taken directly from Smith's article. Evelyn Miner, she says, and I quote here, it really was a unique place. It was all away from the city, just about 3 minutes, fam. And yet it wasn't. It really wasn't, because at one point of it, you were in the city. Just step across the line with a piece of cement and I'm in New Orleans. Come on. Like, really. Okay. She said, you could sit under a tree and dream. I do that today. I need her to know it. I want her to know. Everybody knew each other. They were there to help each other, which is what we don't have today in many respects. Henry Kager, he said it was the most beautiful place to live. It was a family affair. We see the images of these children. This one is a picture of Fazendeville School in 1925. All right. Look at their faces. Yeah, they were learning though. You know, they were together. Their parents weren't fighting one and the other. They were working to make sure that they could do more, go to school, go to college, learn. Right. So the teacher, one of the teachers that as of recent was August 12, 1922. We had Edna Kagan, and that was her family members that had left those quotes in that paper, the New Orleans Tribune. This comes from the St. Bernard Voice from Araby, Louisiana. We show here colored teachers. Fazendeville School at Nakega. See, they can't take the history as long as we're remembering the history and talking about the history.
That's
Can't
right.
remove it. Right, B?
That's
They
right.
can't do it. That's right. They won't be able to do it, fam. So here, I'll just finish by saying that, as we talk about Chalmette and that community, in New Orleans, where Andrew Jackson and you know, his American groups and troops and all that. So, several hundred free men of color and enslaved Africans, enslaved. They defeated the British during the War of 1812. As for aforementioned, the victory of the Battle of New Orleans was a miraculous one, which is stated. They tried to attribute it to the intercession of Our Lady of Prompt Succor, right? But in the 2 centuries, which had ensued between the battle and today, it had been commemorated by the people of the city and the region, many of whom are descendants of these quote unquote Creole families. Remember, we talked about the Creole families and what that really meant because people had a bad understanding of what it meant to be Creole and things like that. You had Creole people, but the Creole people who, we started to talk about later were those who were mixed with African descent, because prior to that, you were talking about Spanish and French, period. All right. But those same Spanish and French, Portuguese, were also what? Having babies with the already mixed breed or the quadroon, the mulattress. They were already having children. So these the Creole families, a extenuation of that. All right. So these Creole families, they had a valiant patriarchs that had many of their families had fought under General Jackson. So, and let's be known that after the Civil War, community of these people, grew up on this portion of land. That all this fighting had occurred. This little small linear community, Fazendeville, you know, all of his settlers, Pierre Fazende, gave this land and took the property of his father. It was a very self-reliant community, as aforementioned, right? And so among the members of Fazendeville, we had this man named Charles, the Charles family. He was an industrious, knowledgeable man. He was a businessman, you know, and the Homer Milton Charles. And for several decades, he ran a grocery store there, a bar, and several pieces of property in the upper section of St. Bernard Parish. His success gained national attention because he was an active member of the National Negro Business League, which was founded in 1900 by Booker T. Washington. It's amazing information about what we don't know. We hear about Booker T. Washington in school. We got this black school in the black community called Booker T. Washington, but do we know what was really happening with the people? What was created? No, we don't. So far removed from this information. All right. So Homer Charles is said to have embodied the spirit of a self-made man. We call our self-made men today. We call them who are entrepreneurs just that. You know, you want me to say you self-made because you knocked down your brother when 100 years, but just not even 60 years before, your brother wasn't trying to knock you down. Your brother was trying to build you up so that both of y'all could have all of the things that one would have. You know, not just one, but all. It's not a dictatorship, right? So Homer was born in St. Martin Parish, which isn't far from St. Bernard Parish, in 1861. And he had 13 siblings, a whole bunch of them. But his early education came from local public schools, the ones that I just showed y'all. We had many of them, all right? And from private tutors. This is interesting here. Private tutors, because our children right now, who are their private tutors? Are we waiting to send them to be taught how to deal with racial injustices and prejudices from those in whom which we have so much? How does that work? Who teaches them now how to act in class? Does anybody have the answer to that? Because who does that? So that's why they say there should be a lot of things happening in the home. And I agree with that. This was as it was here and then and should be now. So what he did, he was first employed on a sugar farm, right? So he had a lot of rows there. And then he began truck farming, like so many people did. My uh, grandfather, my mother's father, was a truck driver from Chicago, yeah, to all over. And this was in a very turbulent time. Had to be in the 30s and 40s. Okay, so then, in 1887, at the age of 26, he started a small produce store. 26. Let's think about that. 26 years old. What are we seeing in the news about the 26-year-olds today? So he started a little produce store near the river. And that little building only measured 9 by 9 feet. Think about that. 9 by 9 feet. See, cause y'all know I get a little, I start seeing some of this stuff, and I see where we are today. It gets to me a little bit. We need to know what we don't know, right? So early on, he determined that if he provided good products and good services and dependable service, he can compete with his quote unquote white competitors. He could compete with them because prior to that, our people were going where to buy these things and from who? If they weren't forming it themselves and had to give all of it to their quote unquote overseers, masters. Yes, let me finish on because we almost finished, fam. All right. So he furthered his business by doing what we do over here at NBK, the promotions. Y'all know brother NBK is the master marketer. I don't care. There's nobody markets better than him. I worked in banking for many years, and guess what? I know he'd have been the branch manager. It's no way. It's just no way. All right. So he made all these house visits and things like that. So he gained a lot of success and patronage from the people. He purchased him a one-horse wagon, and then he followed that by two horses, and then another wagon, and he purchased enough to meet his demands. It was demand and supply, just like his slavery was a demand and a supply system. The White House and the black market. I'm just saying. Okay, so here, family, his partner in life was his wife. He had a business partner, and it was his wife. Her name was Mrs. Hester Anderson. Okay, she helped him to maintain the family business and households and things like that. And the two of them had 4 daughters. And their daughters went to college. They were all well educated. One of them passed prior to being able to graduate from the New Orleans University, which we call UNO, right? And one of his daughters even taught several years at the Fazendeville School, which her father was active in getting established. See, Mr. Charles here actually helped to establish the school as well as the church. All right. So Mr. Charles had a son, Homer Milton Charles, who had been born and reared also in Fazendeville. So as I end here, I just want to say that he also invested in a great deal of rental property, y'all. This man, right? Besides his store and his home was located what we know as North Peter Street at the edge of the Arabic community in New Orleans. Now, New Orleanians know what that is. He also owned stock in the Franciscoville Realty Company. So we're talking about someone who was investing money to make money, and it was helping a lot of people. He also owned stock in that realty company, the Bank of St. Bernard, and the World Bottling Company in New Orleans. All right. He was a very active member in the national, as I mentioned already, the National Negro Business League. And he traveled each year to their annual convention. So we know he went and met a lot of people. So in 1909, he sought and obtained permission to add a bar to his business interests, which was situated near the intersection of Parish Road and Frisco Shell Road. My New Orleanians, Frisco Shell Road. Y'all know it. And then in 1911, one of his feet had to be amputated due to some blood poisoning. And this posed a new challenge for that whole community. You're right. Because it undertiered how his wife could maintain the business and his bright daughters. So although he was real civic-minded businessman and everything in the community, he had some ailments that stopped him. That's why we say your health is your wealth. We know health is wealth. Anything could happen. You don't have to just have an ailment. Things could happen. Whereas that you can't even do things anymore. We need to take this into consideration, family. All right. So in 1902, He presided over the initial meetings of the Fazendeville Educational Association, which he supported the establishment of a public school in that community. And at that time, he was described as one of the most intelligent and public spirited colored businessmen in St. Bernard Parish. Now, in regard to his fraternal interests, Danny, he was also a member of the Felicity Lounge number 199, Knights of Pythias, Daughters of Crescent Tabernacle number 27, and the Progressive Aid Mutual Benefits Association. He was also a devout Christian, him and his wife. I just wanted to mention that. So he died in 21. So the sources for that is a New Orleans item, and that's October 1911. And I'll put it on the reference page. The Times Picayune, 1910. All right. Um, the National Encyclopedia of the Colored Race, Montgomery, Alabama, 1919. And the Federal Census, St. Bernard Parish, Treville Charles Household. So here, family, we find that we had a community. We established a whole lot, which is also some of the things that many strive for today, um, having being faced with so many other assimilations and conformity that we all have been under for so long. It's very difficult. And we can sit around and we can argue about religious ideology and theologies, and we can argue about scientific pseudoscientists and science, and we can argue about all these things. But the crux of it is, what can we do for our community and ourselves as a whole, like these people did in Fazendeville? All right, can we get there at one point? What do we do now in a pandemic? We're in the pandemic, you know? So this is just giving some stories on starting where you stand. And I don't live in St. Bernard Parish, but I am just as part of St. Bernard Parish as I am of Orleans Parish, as I am of the parishes where I've lived. All right? This is what's happening. This is our histories that we don't know anything about and that we need to know. That is why this is New Black Knowledge. Again, because it's history that you never knew and it's new to you. And with that, Alan, I told you I was going to do the 30 minutes. Family, I just want to say I appreciate y'all coming out for some Black empowerment, because that's what this has to be. Now, you don't have to label it that. I'll say Black empowerment. For me, it is. All right. So hopefully the sound was clear enough for everybody, to hear me well. Alan helped me to adjust the sound a little earlier. I wanted to get this out. Alan called it we found another Seneca village. And it seems that way, huh, B? It seems
Yeah,
that way, huh?
yeah. All that's left in Seneca Village is signs.
Right, right, B. So I'm done with the presentation, family. Um, I'm gonna get out of here and stop sharing. Allie, you already know I done lost out already.
Yeah, that was good. That was a good one,
All
man.
right, I done
Use
stopped
some
sharing
stuff
the screen,
on
family. I hope y'all enjoyed this bill. How long did it go, Alan? Did I do the 30 minutes? Did we do that well? Did we
43.
time it okay?
43.
Little bit over, huh? Yeah.
That's
I
okay.
be running my mouth. I'm just be running it. I be running it. But I
This is
just
what the
want
people say, Kaba. This is what they say.
yes.
They they just love the voice, Kaba.
Oh no, there, Alan. I'm back on the page. Peace. Late show 42. You're late to the show if you just tuned in. Thank you, family. Y'all support New Black Knowledge by donating my cash app to Money Score History Man 718. We're here to do this history, and we just like our ancestors prior to us. We all risked our lives to do this. Do you know how much they would just shoot us down for speaking on things? Oh, that nigga's gonna have to be quiet about this. We're gonna have to shut him up. We're gonna have to put these niggas in Philadelphia in the grave. Nobody can find them. Y'all know what I'm talking about. I mean, I ain't trying to be. I'm just telling you these are the things that we went through, and I know that we've come a long way. And we have so much further to go because our children are a reflection of how much work needs to be done, but they also in everything that they do are a reflection of what we will not tolerate anymore. And it's a shame that we have to commence these problems and ills on one and the other, but realize the situations in which they put us in and why black mental illness is so deep. Because like Danny and them was having a show the other day, Alan, and they were talking about depression and things like that. And I was just saying depression is a physical illness. Right? The depressive illnesses are physical. They mess with your brain. Okay? So I'm done, family. I appreciate everybody for tuning in, Alan. I gotta make that run. Um, but
Right.
I loved it. I love the show, and this is something we wanted to do real short. I appreciate you, my brother Rob Bourne, for being there as always, a soldier in this thing. Straight up, just I know y'all get mad with my brother because he like to argue and debate, but he keeps the sharpening people's skills. He helps them to learn more. In the midst, you learn yourself, now don't you, Alan?
Yeah.
He always admits that he didn't know something. That's what I like about my brother. And
Yeah.
all of my brothers feel that way. Danny, Seneb, brother Jehudi, brother MBK, the brother Chris. We admit that we don't know nothing. Our sister Tania in Africa, I forgot to mention her the other time because she does a great work. I love her bills. Y'all tune in. Y'all subscribe on Facebook. We're at MBK Social Group on Facebook, and we're at New Black Knowledge Group on Facebook. We just ask that y'all, don't come in there trying to, give us all these fake pictures and all that. Cause if I'm in control to let y'all in, y'all don't get in. Cause I just ignore that crazy stuff. It's social media. I don't have time for all that. My brothers done got catfish 1,000 times. I get so tired of that. I be like, what is that? Does it look real to you? All right, tell them open up the live and say hi. We got you. Respect, ma'am, Shaz. Respect to everybody that tuned into this show today. This is what we do at New Black Knowledge. All right. And the only way that we can continue to give anything to our children is to make it known. Is to make it known, fam. And with that, I say peace and Black African power to everybody. I want to shout out my brother Unc West, the God Killer. Y'all subscribe to the Real Black Atheist on Fire. All right, and that's it. Subscribe to New Black Knowledge on YouTube. We love y'all. Well, I don't know. I might have to listen to Dirk on what he say. He can't tell a nigga that he love him when he be lying. He don't love him. I might have to say that too about some of this stuff, right? But peace in everybody. Peace, brother Sineb. All right, and peace to the love family. And Alan, I'm out. I know y'all got a lot of bills today, but I'm gonna move out for a minute, and we got
Good
it
job,
done. B,
man. That was great. It was
what you
great.
got? Hold before we leave, my brother. What you got to say?
I don't have nothing to say. I just
Y'all
learned.
have y'all ever known Alan with nothing to say?
I have nothing to say. What am I supposed to say? That was good.
Of course, brother.
You
That's what
always
we we,
come with the
we
history.
learn from.
You always come with the history. I don't know. I'm like, what is she talking? I don't
Hey,
know that.
brother. We learn from each other constantly, and it's
Right.
a whole lot more. And Alan, now before we go, I got this book. I'll mention it to all these people too with you, but I think I already told you about it. But it was something I was checking out the other day in there, and I think I'm gonna try to scan the pages on my printer and send them all to you, brother. And it's a good book. It's Voodoo: The Origins and Practices. And man, it is cold. Do you hear me? You're gonna love this because of the historical inferences that it gives about West Africa, Central Africa, and the connection. But listen, um, I want to say something, and I'm not going to read it, but it's in this book called the Black American Short Stories: A Century of the Best, and it's edited by Dr. John Henrik Clark. And if you guys can find that book, grab it. You're dealing with an Uncle Remus library system, so it's one of them hard ones to find. They've been trying to hide a lot of good stuff, but the introduction that Dr. John Henrik Clark gives in here is very important because he starts off by saying generally that Africans sold as slaves came from oral culture and its traditions. And then he said this assumption is true for some parts of Africa, but not for others. And then he goes on to say the nations of the Nile Valley, such as Egypt, Ethiopia, and Sudan, and the independent states in inner West Africa, known as the Western Sudan, had a strong literary tradition. So we're gonna talk about that next time, fam. You know what I'm saying? But I appreciate you, Alan. I'm gonna hit y'all up a little later. And peace to the family. And of course, this has been an NBK way. Y'all know what it is. Peace and love to y'all. We appreciate y'all support.
Right. Peace.
Peace.
And broadcast.